Welcome back to another episode of the Virtual Sessions presented by the DJ Sessions. I'm your host, Darren, and right now I'm sitting in the virtual studios in Seattle, Washington with none other than Eliot and Olivia, although you know, always get that backwards. Right, there we go. From LA, and Boston, coming in from Sonic Impact, the podcast series. How are you two doing this afternoon?
Doing well. Thank you for having us.
Thanks, Darren. We're doing great. We're excited to be here and talk about our podcast that you've discovered.
Yeah, now tell our DJ Sessions viewers a little bit about Sonic Impact. What is the premise? What's the main reason about it?
The premise is pretty clean. It's basically one guest comes on per episode, and they tell about their life journey with an artist, basically the impact that one artist had on their life. It usually starts at a young age. So they start with sort of that moment when they were 15 or 10 or 17, and the impact that that moment had, and then how it stayed with them and sort of it affected their whole life. And it often ends in either a meeting with the artist, working with the artist, or just some life-changing event. And so the way we sort of looked at it was Olivia and I, who Olivia obviously is my daughter, and who's a terrific young music fanatic like myself, although I'm not young, but she takes that part. And we just thought that was an interesting hook to have a father-daughter combo. You don't see that much or hear that much. And we set up the podcast with sort of our current sonic impacts that we're having. We set up the guests and the artists, and then we let I sort of take these very curated and produced discussions with these guests. And and I think that everybody can relate to the idea that an artist who, anybody who loves music can relate to one artist who just changed their life and maybe actually set them on a path that they wouldn't have been on if they hadn't discovered that artist. So we try to really find excellent stories. It's not sort of general interviews about, I love this artist, I went to a concert. They really, there's a tipping point and it changed their life forever.
That's very interesting because I remember when we first started our show, the DJ Sessions, we were in one of our first studios in downtown Seattle. And it was in this kind of basement of, it was at kind of a notable place called the OK Hotel, where a lot of bands got their first start, like Nirvana, Pearl Jam, Alice in Chains. But they since then converted into condominiums, and the OK Hotel part of it went away. But there were practice band rooms downstairs. And somebody who became a friend of mine later in life after this incident was walking by our studio this one time when we were doing one of our shows. And we happened to have a DJ in the studio by the name of Darude. And Darude's really big. He has a big hip and has a song called Sandstorm. Everyone knows it. If you hear Sandstorm, you probably go, oh, I know that song. And anyways, she's walking by the studio and she sees him in the studio. And she stops and she's like, she didn't want to interrupt production or anything, but she's like, she got somebody's attention. So she comes over, she talks to me, she says, is it okay if I say hi to him? And I'm like, yeah, come in. And she says hi to him. She talks to him. And later on, after we became friends, she told me the story about how much Darude had changed her life because she was in a very down and out place one night, like really down and out, like almost getting ready to commit suicide. And one of his songs came on the TV and she heard it, and it brought her up and lifted her up so much. It literally changed her life around. And to be just walking through this hallway in this downstairs basement kind of studio space and seeing Darude in the studio, and being able to say thank you. I never heard the conversation she had with him, but she later told me that that's what she was saying to him. And then we became friends. It was just kind of serendipitous. It sounds like those are those kind of moments that you're looking for Sonic Impact.
What's really interesting about it, every episode we did is very different from the other. I mean, literally not one is the same. And that's what that's what we loved about it. So it is, one key artist. So, and they ranged the gamut. And we just sort of, we found sort of 10 great stories we loved and did but I think what happens is it's all that moment you find them, the impact of what that the music and the artist had on you, and then how it stayed with you for the rest of your life. We had a story of a guy, literally who did a lip syncing contest in the 80s, of playing Boy George, who was sort of a big iconic gay figure. And our guest didn't even know that he was gay, but ended up doing this. And through that lip syncing moment, eventually realized, oh, I've discovered that I realized I'm gay, and then ends up meeting Boy George and tells him the story. And so there's just this great, beautiful, human, honest, story of discovery and then this impact. And I think all the stories, if you listen to it, you'll get something out of it. You'll relate to it. I think everybody has most people don't have the epicness of these stories. I think everybody has like artists they love and have impacted them, but not like to the point where it changed their life and it led them on a path. And I think that's sort of what makes this unique.
Now, you didn't start off as a podcaster. You started off in television as a TV producer. How long have you been doing that for? And was the transition for you easy to make it from TV to internet distribution?
Well, let me just tell you quickly. I have a 30-year plus career as a television producer and executive, and I still am a television producer. So I
Olivia, we all got to freeze.
Oh, shit.
No, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
All right. So I've been a TV producer and executive for over 30 years, and I still am. This was a side gig, if you will, side hobby and a passion. And it really happened because during COVID, everyone was home and had a lot of downtime. And I thought I'd like to do something creative that's not what I do. It's out of my comfort zone. And this idea hit me one night. It's a long story. I won't bore you all the details, but I thought, hey, I wonder if there's an idea in this, a podcast idea. I don't know anything about hosting. I don't know anything about podcasting. I don't know how to produce this. I don't know how to distribute it, nothing. And I just sort of decided to dive in and try it because I knew you can do it in your house and I'll figure it out. And because I'm a storyteller in my career, I knew that I could tell great stories. I just have to figure out how to tell them. So from there, I went to friends, went to people in the industry, people who I knew were music fanatics who had these experiences. And I really curated those stories. I said, do you have a story that's going to sustain 20 minutes? It can't just be, I went to a concert, I loved it, and I love Prince, and I bought all of his albums. It really had to, either you had to meet the person, or you had to work with them, or you had to go on a journey with them in their life. Mm-hmm. So that was sort of the impetus for it. And then I was going to do it with a friend of mine who's another older white guy who loves music. And he dropped out on me, and I had this brainstorm, and one moment, and I just said, what about Olivia? What about my daughter? Like, she loves music. She loves to talk about it. We bond over it. And what a great thing to do together. And so I'll let Olivia talk about how she came into it. But I just thought that was so cool. She had never done anything like this either. I didn't know if she could do it. We didn't know if this thing was going to work. And so I think we're sort of shocked that people have liked it as much as they have. And we found a format that works. But Olivia can tell you how she came into it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Olivia, how did you get roped into it? He kind of gave the precursor, but tell us about your involvement with the show and what you do and your passion behind everything.
Yeah, definitely. I think I had known about your idea for this podcast once you told me about it, but it was very early in the process. I remember I was on the T, which is the Boston subway, and you called me and was like, I have a proposition for you. I was like, I have no idea what this is going to be at all. But okay. And then he presented it and was like, my partner dropped out. Would you want to do this with me? And I was like, be your co-host? Like, okay, sure. Like, I didn't even think twice. I'm a student at Emerson. I'm going to be a senior. So I study film. So I'm interested in media in all its forms, storytelling and music. Like, music is like almost bigger of a passion of mine than movies. I was always, my dream job, I will to this day say, is to be a rock star, but being a filmmaker seemed a little bit more practical, a little bit of an easier path. But I still, like, music is so important to me, and it's going to be in my life in many forms, like forever. So I play music. My dad plays a lot of music, and he always tried to teach me growing up, but I wouldn't stick with it. I don't know. It's really easy to like get frustrated at your parent when they're your music teacher. But it took me going away for the summer to camp. I was a counselor at camp, and that's when a friend of mine taught me how to play guitar. So I was 17. So I've been practicing ever since, started writing some of my own songs. I go to concerts like at least once a month. Like, I just have to, especially after COVID. Like, COVID happened as I was like I was a freshman in college, so I was like, oh, I can go to concerts on my own now. Like I can buy a ticket like that. I was discovering that right when I couldn't go anymore. So afterwards, I was like, boom, 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 sign me up. And it's like just one of my favorite parts of living. It brings me the most joy. So doing this podcast has been really amazing. I've gotten to learn a lot of older music that I didn't know and just hear some really phenomenal and inspiring stories.
You know, it's funny, when I first started this mission of going out and wanting to go to college and go to college to get a business degree, to learn how to run a company, so I could run a production company to produce my first television show. I found out that once I called myself a producer, I started getting a lot of pitches. Everyone telling me their ideas of what they thought a great television show would be and what I should do. And I made a rule that I don't take verbal pitches. There's a rule. If you can write it down in a paragraph, put it on a piece of paper, I will spend time with somebody to do it. Even my mom came to me at one point and pitched me a show saying, you should do a show about pets. You should do a show about dogs. It'd be so cute. I say, Mom, no verbal pitches. You write a paragraph about it. I promise I'll sit down and talk with you about it. But it sounded like you kind of had a reverse on that, where the parent was pitching the child instead of I mean, you had the idea over there, Eliot, and then you pitched her to be part of the show as if it was the other way around, where my mom was trying to pitch me to do the show that she wanted to have done.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of this whole thing is it all was very organic. It wasn't really well thought out because I had no expectations of what it was going to be. I mean, I've spent years, in networks and production companies doing big television shows, and there's a whole process to that. It was so wonderful to not have any network notes, to have no one telling me, oh, I don't think you should book that guest. I think you should cut it this way. The artwork isn't right. We did it. I bounce it off Olivia and she'd go, yeah, I think that's great. Or I would tweak this. And I found, you'll appreciate this as someone who does podcasting. I started I asked a really well-known television executive named Doug Herzog, who's he ran MTV and Comedy Central for years. And I just knew his music love. And I just literally reached out to him and I said, hey, Doug, would you do an interview for me? I want to try out this podcast. And he was cool enough to do it. But when I did like an hour interview and I listened to it and I was like, yeah, it's cool, but like, it's too much. There's too much just talking and there's no form. That's when I came to it. I'm going to pull out all the crap and tighten this thing. And I think a 15-minute interview is, it went from not being an interview, it went to being really a story. And me not really hosting, but helping the story to, it's from sort of beginning, middle, and end, have an arc to it. And that's when I realized what the idea was. And then I realized, well, it needs a setup, like it needs a context. And then I thought, well, that's when I need a co-host. We can set it up, talk about it. And then after it's over, we can sort of do the deep dive after. That's how the format happened. But what I realized is to edit these things, it takes weeks. Like every led, like the, and then you listen, you're like, oh no, I got to redo it. So it really took 2 years to do these 10 episodes. No joke. Like it took a lot of time. I didn't just sort of like record it with a crappy mic and, put it on the air. Cause I'm a professional as a television producer. I looked at it as a professional show, the way we promoted it, the way we teased it, the way we added music, all these things. So we're really proud of it. And honestly, the secret sauce for a lot of people and myself is Olivia. Like people go, it's funny because she goes, I hate my voice. I'm not very good. And everyone's like, Olivia, you're great. Really great. If you've listened to the podcast, people are shocked that she's 20, that she's that articulate, and that we have this, we have this natural chemistry. But I think she sort of was the last added piece that gave it something really unique. So I give her props.
Oh, thank you.
It takes me back to, I was never supposed to be hosting my own television series. I was supposed to be exec behind the scenes, pulling the purse strings, making all the production, making all that happen. And I remember that there's that saying, the show must go on. And this is somewhere in 2005, 2006-ish. I said, okay, the show must go on. I need somebody to host this. So I grabbed one of the kids that I was working with at the Apple store who made some short films and stuff. And sorry, I live on one of the last worst street corners in downtown Seattle. If you're hearing that siren go by, we can talk about that another time. That's a show in itself called Third and Crime, but we won't go into that now. But anyways, I picked up the mic. and we were doing this rooftop shot. I had it all set up, and I did 64 takes on a 30-second intro. And then I stopped counting and probably did another 20 to 30 takes because I wanted to have that right breath. I wanted to have that right moment. I wanted to just hit the mark right on. And, then I realized I probably should have a script for this. I was working off a script, but kind of just over time have organically let the flow go. And I think podcasting I was putting so much pressure on myself from a broadcast perspective. Has to be perfect. Has to be perfect. Whereas in podcasting land, it's like, no, it doesn't. There's a lot of room here to be, to have forgiveness. And, we were starting out with gear, and I tell people now, hey, you have an idea for a podcast, just find your subject matter, research, know what you're going to talk about, find out if there's already 5,000 podcasts on the same subject. Maybe if there is, dial it down a little bit. And like I just pulled it out of my head is think like fly fishing. Okay. You can talk about fly fishing, but there's so many probably different types of fly fish you could talk about those kind of, or make a subject matter of like 12 shows and lay them out. But Ellie, you and I know that we're going to pre-production the hell out of this crap. Here we go. But sometimes I kind of just run and gun it with a live series. And I like that real aspect now of lights, camera, action. It's on, but you're live. There's no cuts. There's no takes. We get it all in one, and that's it. It's in the can. I mean,
I wish I could say ours was just one and gun. We did a lot of editing, and because we've never done it before, and we really didn't want to bore people. And Olivia and I wanted to, there's no reason to have all that sort of extra stuff. But I think what we're most proud of is we did it on our own. We had minimal help. Nobody really paid for it. And we designed the artwork, we figure out what the music should be, how we're going to do the teases, promote it every week. And at the end of the day, they're just great stories. And for any music lover, for any person who has been to, incredible concerts, incredible record collections, and music speaks to you in a different way, everybody can relate to it. And I think these artists, they don't realize sometimes the impact they have on us. And that's, unfortunately we didn't get to talk to the artists, but it's not what this is about. It's really about the people, the effect that people had.
You mentioned earlier that it's 10 episodes that you have right now. It took you almost 2 years to produce. Are you in production right now? Is that season 1 and now you're looking at doing season 2, or what's the future of the podcast? Where is it going?
Well, a lot will depend. There's a lot of factors in that. I have a busy job. Olivia's got a busy life. These episodes, I think there's a lot to dive into with them. So, I think there's plenty to listen to for a while. Our goal is to definitely do a second season. It just takes a long time. We have to, find the right story. You can't just put anybody on with any story. You have to, take the time to edit. We've gotten better, and I've learned how to edit. Olivia knows now how to do her job, really well. So I think moving forward now, part of it's developing a show, developing a format, finding your way, doing these interviews and going, okay, what's the right length and all this. That took time. And, we weren't getting paid for it. So it wasn't like we were doing it every day, from 10 to 7, we would come in and out. I'd edit it, midnight for a couple of hours. So Olivia and I would have to find time. She was in Boston at school. Well, when can we do our wraps? So yes, our goal is to do more. And we think we've hit on something really cool. So if you have great stories with a great artist, we love to hear them.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Our original concept of the show was that I would have DJs come on and play, but I would interview them for about 5 minutes before, let them play for 50 minutes, and then interview them for like a post roll and do rinse, wash, repeat for 4 hours. And then I broke away from that and said, nope, it's just going to be about the music. I'm not doing interviews anymore. Now I've come back and we have the music, but now we have a whole nother live interview series that they come on and we interview them live, and then we get exclusive mixes from them, and then also invite them to come play on the show live when they're here in one of our locations, whether it's Seattle or Phoenix. And it's kind of like you said, it changes. And the thing I love about it is being a podcast or an independent series, no one's pulling the strings. Yeah. I get to control that format. If I all of a sudden say I want to start a new series right now, technically the DJ sessions has the mobile sessions, the rooftop sessions, the cab sessions, the silent concert sessions, 7B's brunch series sessions, the live interview sessions, secret sessions, state of the industry sessions. These are all like 9 different branches of shows that I put under the umbrella of the DJ sessions. Because if I come up with an idea, I want to be able to move with it. I want to move as fast as I want to move, or as slow as I want to move. If I want to take a break from all this, I'm not doing anything for 2 months.
Well, when I first started, I talked to a few companies about, backing us, and a guy said to me, "Why do you want to do this?" And he said, do you want to get rich?" I said, "No." "Do you want to be famous from it?" "No." "Do you want to boost your career?" "No." He goes, "Okay, then you should do it." Because if you don't have any expectations and you're not have some big goal that you want something out of this, that was never honestly, the only reason to do it is because I love storytelling. I love music. I thought it'd be really cool to hear people's great stories of how artists have impacted them. And I love the idea of doing it with my daughter. And, moving forward, Olivia and I have talked about, I'd love her to do more interviews. I'd love her to tell younger artists. That's the other thing, is that you can get in this many ways. If you're a younger person, you hear Olivia's perspective and you're like, "Oh yeah, I didn't know about who, the Rolling Stones were, but that's cool to learn about." And she gives you that information at the beginning of the episode of who Keith Richards is and what was going on at this time, and, those kind of things. And then if you're an older, music lover, you can hear Olivia's perspective about a concert she went to that week that we wouldn't know who Rex Orange County is, but she tells that story and we connect on it, and so there's many ways into this. And, I'll let Olivia talk about, her goals for the future, but I think that's the beauty of why having a father-daughter, generational, male-female, it's like opposites.
Yeah, Olivia, what has been your experience like doing this podcast series and jumping into entertainment? I mean, you have a show now. You're part of a show. You have viewers, you have subscribers, you have people listening to you, and you didn't have to go on a casting call or get an agent to make the. Well, I guess your dad could be kind of your agent, but he's the exec of the show. But what has that experience been like for you?
Yeah, it's been kind of mind-blowing because from that first ride on the subway where it was like, yeah, sure, it's felt pretty casual. It's like, okay, I knew it was a podcast, but it was like I'm just talking to my dad about these stories that he recorded. And I think when it really hit me was when we published the first episode, or maybe it was the trailer that we published. I was like, wait, Spotify, where I get my podcast, it's there. And it was just kind of like, wow, we made this, and to do it so easily, obviously we talked, it wasn't easy, but in terms of, like you said, no cast, I just got to be me. I just got to talk into a mic and put something out there. And my dad has said, zero expectations, but the other thing about it that has really blown my mind is that we have listeners all over the world. I think it's US, Canada, and Iraq for the top 3. I'm just like, what? How did that's so just I can't believe people are listening to my voice in all these places. And it's just, I have my issues with the technology and the society that we live in, and but overall, this part of it, being able to publish media from your bedroom, is pretty phenomenal. And this is my, I've made small little film projects in school and whatnot, but this is my first piece of media in the world that I've created. And I was like, I could put this on my resume. This is an actual thing I've done. And
she's really good at it. And if you listen to it, I'm not saying that just my dad, a lot of people have reached out and said, Olivia is really good at this. She's very smart, very articulate, as you can hear, very poised. And she does the research on these artists. She didn't know anything about who Elvis Costello was. And she went to, well, Elvis Costello in 1977 was this guy, and he was working in a factory. And I'm learning things from her, and the audience is learning things from her. And then she's learning things from these stories. And after she reacts in real time, said, God, I love when she talks about how, Elvis and her met at this, it's just been look, a lot of kids don't even want to be around their parents, Olivia and I are not that. We love being around each other. We love our time together. And we really, it's just a chemistry that you can't make up what we have. So I'm thrilled that she's been a big part of this. And I have to tell you, if you go listen to Sonic Impact and listen to each of these stories, it does have this flow each week. We sort of rolled it out as like almost like a television show. Like we didn't just binge them. It's like each week, every Friday, this is Paul McCartney episode. So all the Paul McCartney fans, next week it's Bob Marley. And each story is so specific. Like we tease them as, a 15-year-old boy's mom takes him to a Jamaica for this benefit concert. It happens to be Bob Marley. And you're like, what? And then, you get into it, and Olivia and I set it up in this sort of nice way. And she's like, I didn't know Bob Marley was, but he was here. And then all of a sudden you go on this journey of this Bob Marley story. And then this guy, Doug Herzog, ends up like becoming one of the biggest executives in music television history. You're like, wow, that's a journey. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take the listeners on a journey. And I guess I'll just, to toot my own horn for a second, because of being a television producer and a storyteller for so many years, I just instinctually know sort of like where to take these and what will hopefully suck the audience in and how to like keep them wanting to hear more. And so, yeah, I just think we stumbled upon something that is, I think, really special. And I'm glad people in Iraq are loving it.
I think one of the most inspirational things for me that I see is that you have this 30 years of being in the industry, yet you're willing to try something new and take a new direction with it. And also bring your daughter involved in it, who is the, generation now, and couple that together and work on that. It's very inspirational to me, for one. I mean, if I had a child and they wanted to be in a podcast with me, I'd be like, cool, this is awesome. And I could take them and talk about music and concerts and electronic music and share that. That's an awesome, that's a pitch and show in itself what you're doing, which is amazing.
It is so gratifying, and thank you. And I tell you, the thing that I've been most appreciative of and grateful of is to have this experience with Olivia. No matter what happens this will always be out there. We will always have this memory, and I hope we do a lot more. But this was happening during a very challenging time in her life, and we won't go into all the details of that. But it ended up being the perfect time and the perfect place for us to have something really positive,
Mm-hmm.
and that brought us together. And I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, congratulations, you two, on making this happen. I'm going to subscribe. You also, you out there in DJ Sessions Land should subscribe. Sonic Impact. Where can people find out more information about Sonic Impact? Where do they go to?
Well, you can go to iTunes. Obviously, it's on every major platform: Spotify, Audible, Amazon, Stitcher, etc. Please rate us, review us. That always helps. You can get on our website too. It's sonicimpactpod.com. I think, Olivia, is that right? But right? That's it.
I think so.
We don't use the website that much. We're very novice at this. I mean, it's the kind of thing that people are finding, and that we don't even know how. But yeah, we look forward to in the future season to get some sort of musicians on and artists, actors, people who have their own sonic. I mean, to hear like how Dave Grohl was impacted by who his main impact, and then played with them. Those are sort of, I think, the next level that we'd love to get. And I speak for Olivia, I guess, but I like her to bring on some younger artists, some female artists, some artists of color, just to really break it up. But we know the format, we know the formula now. So Olivia I'll pass the torch hopefully soon.
And Olivia, is there anything you'd like to say to our DJ Sessions fans before we let you both go?
Sure. Yeah. First of all, thank you so much for listening. Like I said, it's just really means a lot that people take the time. Like there's so much content out there. So if anyone's listening to me doing this interview or then continues to listen to the podcast, truly thank you. And I guess I'll just speak a little bit about music and why it means so much to me and what I hope that this podcast can bring to other people. And I feel like music to me is just like connection, and it's everything, it's all the emotions of life. And to me, like music and life are sort of like synonymous things. They're just one and the same. And I feel like it just allows you to connect with all of your emotions and connect with artists and other people who like the music or people at a concert, just like connection. And listening to these stories, you can connect to the people telling the stories. You can connect to the stories of the artists that they're talking about through their music. And I just hope that people will listen and feel that sort of connection that I felt. I felt connected to my dad doing the podcast. Just music, I think, brings us all together and brings you closer to yourself. So that's just what I hope I share with the world.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more on that. It's like the cornerstone of our show, and what our premise was to bring people together through music and kind of heal through music in our own community, our local community. When I started this as a local show, which is now kind of gotten to a national and international and bigger show, but it's still about bringing people together through music and sharing that and that story worldwide. Well, thank you both again for coming on the series. Got to do my signature outro now before we run out of time, but thank you again. We'll be following up with you here in the future and look forward to having you on the DJ sessions again.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been great.
Welcome.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Darren. I hope everybody checks out Sonic Impact and all the incredible artists and guests that we got on. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Absolutely. That is sonicimpactpod.com, by the way.
Yes.
And on that note, don't forget to go to our website, thedjsessions.com. Find us on Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, Meta, Instagram, all out there, even Roku, Amazon Fire, Google Play, and soon to be Apple TV. It's the DJ Sessions, but all our information is at thedjsessions.com. Let's see if I get this right. That's Eliot. That's Olivia with Sonic Impact Podcast Series. And we'll be seeing you next time on the DJ Sessions, because remember, on the DJ Sessions, the music never stops.